We all remember the memes. Golden State blew a 3-run lead. The unfortunate demise of the NBA's record-breaking 73-win team that failed to win a ring.
While we remember the astonishing efforts of LeBron James to bring a championship to Cleveland against impossible odds, we often overlook the events that occurred just before that.
Losing a series after going up 3-1 is a tough pill to swallow. But many forget that Golden State overcame a 3-1 deficit themselves just days before.
The 2016 Western Conference Finals is perhaps one of the greatest playoff series in NBA history for both what happened on the court and the shocking aftermath.
Join us today as we take the NBA time machine back just 7 years in real time, but find ourselves in a place that feels like a whole different era to many NBA fans.
This is Once Upon a Dribble.
Hello. Welcome back. We are at it again. Josh, how you feeling?
Feeling good. We're back at it. Crazy enough, we were just talking the other day. We have the NBA season right around the corner. Weather's starting to cool off a little bit. Leaves are changing, and that can only mean one thing. It's football, and then, of course, right after that, the NBA season, which it's crazy.
It really is crazy just how fast things go. I mean, you have the finals in June, the NBA draft at the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
You have Summer League in July, and then a couple months later, it's preseason. Let's lock and load. Let's go.
And I feel like we're just barely starting to process, depending on when you guys are listening to this, but we're just processing the big Dame blockbuster trade to Milwaukee a few days ago, and consequently the Drew Holiday trade to Boston. And it's like, as soon as I'm processing that, we got training camp, we got preseason games starting next Thursday, I believe. It's go for the NBA. It really is a year-round league.
And there's going to be more dominoes to fall after this Dame and Holiday trade. At least I believe there's going to be a lot more dominoes to fall. So the teams are going to look a lot different going into this 2023 season than they did going into the 2022 season. I'll tell you that right now. But when we talk about teams looking different, we're going back on the NBA time machine just 7 years on this episode, and it feels like we're in completely different territory in some ways.
Yeah, with how fast-paced, like you said, everything is nowadays, especially in this era of player movement where, you go back 15, 20 years and, you see a lot more continuity year in, year out in terms of the big names. But now it seems like, like you said, we're only going back to 2016 today. That's less than a decade. And despite a lot of these players still being in the league and still producing at a high level, the landscape is drastically different. Completely different.
And probably the most memorable thing to come out of this season, well, there's quite a few things, but Golden State, 73 wins. We're going to talk about how they got there. We're going to talk about what led up to their eventual demise, but moreover, we're going to talk about the 2016 Western Conference Finals, a series that kind of gets forgotten over what happened immediately afterwards, but a series that is worth a deep dive. And it really begins with Golden State. So, Josh, how did Golden State get to this point?
Right. And, at this point, entering into this matchup against the Thunder, Golden State has quickly ascended to the top of the basketball world. And they really are everyone's darlings. The reason for that is because, they went from this budding, kind of stubborn, scraggly, playoff contender, spunky playoff team in 2013 and 2014, where, Steph is very much a star, but he's not quite a superstar yet. Draymond Green isn't quite a household defensive name. He's not out there getting texts left and right quite yet on a national stage. And Steve Kerr isn't even coaching this team. And that's all going to change after that 2014 season where, out of nowhere in 2015, the Warriors go for a 67-win season behind new coach Steve Kerr. He replaces Mark Jackson. And Steph also breaks out in this 2015 season. He ascends to this superstar status that I was alluding to. He captures his first MVP. And, just as important, everyone kind of forgets this, is that Golden State does find this secret sauce with Draymond Green. He's this undersized forward out of Michigan State, trying to still kind of carve a role for himself in the NBA. He becomes a full-time starter in the 2014-15 season where he, breaks out as this all-league defender. And as you can say. I'm sure a lot of people can say an all-league irritant. Um,
Yeah, Draymond, just the name makes people mad.
And, the antics really start that year, and they're going to really escalate in this Western Conference Finals that we'll see here in a little bit. And then, of course, goes without saying, you got Klay Thompson, who's the second half of the Splash Brother tandem. He breaks the 20-point per game threshold right there as well. And, all these factors come together to create this really magical finals run for Golden State, where they make it to the finals against this banged-up Cleveland team. They're without Kyrie and Kevin Love, so they're able to dispatch LeBron, Mozgov, Dellavedova, and co. In 6 games, but they get their first Larry O'Brien since the 1970s. And, they come into this 2016 season and they hit the ground running. They don't miss a single beat. Calvin, I don't know if you remember how crazy the Warriors, I guess, kind of captured the attention of the sports world in the start of that season. They win the first 24 games of the 15-16 season. I mean, do you remember the discourse that time around the Warriors?
Yeah, no, I remember it very well. Instantly, you start to get comparisons to the 96 Chicago Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
Instantly, you start getting questions. Are they going to beat the record? Are they going to get to 72 wins? And you start following them on the schedule at this point. You're looking at all the teams they play. And in most cases, they're not just winning. They're blowing people out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they have one overtime game there in November against the Nets. I think my Jazz, got them to within 3 points. They had a couple of games that were relatively close. But generally, yeah, they are blowing people out. And they are taking names and they are leaving no prisoners.
Oh, yeah. And, yeah, like you said, they're just blowing teams out. And the start really is historic. They surpass some pretty old records. The previous record of 15-0 to start a season, just 15 games, was previously set by the 94 Rockets and the 1949 Capitals. For those at home, the Capitals are indeed not a current NBA franchise to show how far back that record goes. But then, of course, they keep winning. They get to 24. They break a 131-year-old record, which was 20-0. And this record wasn't even set by a basketball team. It is by the 1884 St. Louis Maroons, a baseball team, to claim the best start to a season in all of the major professional sports in America.
Wow. That's just astounding. And big shout out to the St. Louis Maroons, who we all
Right.
know how that went. We all remember that.
I tell you, I'm talking about the Maroons day in and day out. As a card collector, I got to get me some St. Louis Maroons rookie cards.
Ooh,
for the
I don't care who it is. If you find one in good condition, it's going to be worth a lot of money.
Right. And of course, this continues throughout the season. The Warriors stay dominant. They do get to that 73 win mark, where a record that I grew up thinking was going to be unbeatable. The 72-10 Chicago Bulls. No other team had even reached 70 wins other than them, and they get to it. Steph Curry is, of course, named MVP of the league for the second straight year. He's the 11th player to win back-to-back MVP honors at the time, and he's the first player to win the award by a unanimous vote as well. He got all 131 first-place votes.
Wow.
The closest player to do that was actually LeBron in 2013. He got 130 of 131 first-place votes. So pretty remarkable, season for Steph by all accounts. They're all named, Steph, Draymond, Klay, all All-Stars. Draymond Green breaks the Golden State franchise record for 9 triple-doubles in the season. Steph, of course, is breaking numerous three-point records. And this sort of momentum just transitions right into the playoffs, where they're going to face this Rockets team, a team that they actually faced the year prior in the conference finals. But this Rockets team is drastically different. This is the Dwight Howard, James Harden Rockets, and Howard is very much on his way out as a star in this league. And they fall to an 8 seed, so that's why they're meeting in the first round here. But what happens in this first round series is Steph sustains this injury, and he's only going to play in the first half of games 1 and 4 due to this MCL injury that he kind of takes on. And early in his career, Steph had struggled many times with ankle injuries. So they're going to hold him out for a little bit, but he does make a return in the second round against the Portland Trail Blazers. Most notably, he comes off the bench in this massive 132-125 overtime win in Portland, where he scores 40 points, probably one of his best games ever. He scores 17 points in overtime of that game in just those 5 minutes. It's I'm by no means a massive Golden State fan, but that game is genuinely remarkable. If you go back and just see how in 5 minutes, you kind of feel helpless, and that's how it was at this time. If you're a fan of a team, and you have the Warriors up next on the docket, they felt inevitable at this point. So they take out the Trailblazers, and they move on to the conference finals to face a pretty familiar face in terms of Western Conference contention at the time. That's the Oklahoma City Thunder.
It is, and to understand how the Thunder got here, we do have to dial it back a little bit further, because really the story of the 2015-2016 Thunder really goes all the way back to the Emerald City, where in 2006, Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz finds himself in ownership of one of the NBA's most iconic franchises. Right, we can all agree the Sonics. Lenny Wilkins, Spencer Hayward, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, just to name a few. It's a landmark franchise. But it's a franchise that's costing Schultz millions of dollars. An outdated arena with the smallest seating capacity in the league, only one playoff appearance in the last 6 years, a city that utterly refuses to fund a new arena with tax dollars. Schultz ultimately has no other option but to sell the franchise. And the buyer is a billionaire businessman named Clay Bennett, a native of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. There's a lot more to this story, enough to fill an entire episode, honestly, Josh, with drama, accusations that Bennett never intended to keep the team in Seattle. But that's for another day. For now, we do focus on the last thing that Seattle did. Well, one of the last things they did before moving. And that happens in the 2007 NBA draft. When holding the second overall pick, the Sonics selected a skinny kid from Texas who couldn't even manage one rep of 185 pounds on the bench press at the NBA Combine. The skinny weak kid's name was Kevin Durant.
This was an iconic draft. I remember going back to this time, significant for myself as a Celtics fan, even though I'm about 12 or 13 years old at this point. The Celtics are in a time where this is pre-acquisition of Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen, and they're floundering. And this is a big deal because the Celtics are top lottery odds for this draft, where it's between Kevin Durant and this other guy out of Ohio State by the name of Greg Oden, who just had his own remarkable college season over there with the Buckeyes. And the two guys go 1 and 2. The Celtics infamously don't even get one of the first two picks. They fall pretty far in the lottery despite having the best odds. But I remember KD coming out of Texas, and of course all the doubts were simply about his physique. But as far as the skill goes, he really was someone who felt like he was going to be a natural right away.
No, absolutely. And things turned out good for Seattle. Not so good if you were drafting Greg Oden, number one. Not by any fault of his own. Injuries happen. But then the very next year, their first year in Oklahoma City, with their very first draft pick, has the Oklahoma City Thunder. They draft this super springy, super athletic guard out of UCLA, and his name was Russell Westbrook. So the team gradually improves. They go from a 25-win team to a 50-win team in just a couple of years. Excuse me, that's actually a 33-win team to a 50-win team. Sorry, I misread my note there. But this is all done with a 21-year-old Durant finishing second in MVP voting.
Wow.
So we're gonna fast forward just a few years to get us to where we need to be in 2015, 2016. As Durant is beginning to develop, Chris Ballard noted for ESPN, quote, Durant represents the end of a cycle, which went from big guys who could shoot, to big guys who could shoot threes, to big guys who could lead the break. And then we got to Durant, the sum of all possibilities, a nearly 7-foot forward who is most effective off the dribble, who Euro-steps at full speed and bottoms out fadeaway 27-footers. He is the Tony Kukoc we were promised delivered 2 decades later.
I love that. That's great. That's great. Yeah, that's an all-timer.
So, with these two new, just unbelievably talented stars, unbelievable luck in the draft, over the next few years, Oklahoma City starts putting up a run that would really was reminiscent of the early to mid 90s Sonics. For 5 years, they averaged 55 wins a season, and it all culminates in Durant's MVP in 2013. Now, on this run, Josh, they won a total of 7 playoff series. They made a couple of Western Conference finals. They even made it to the finals once. But then it all looked like it was all going to crumble down. Just 1 year before the fateful series, Durant misses all but 27 games with nagging foot and ankle injuries just the year after his MVP. And for the first time in years, Oklahoma City is watching the playoffs from the couch. Durant would say, "It was the toughest year I've ever had playing basketball. I'm definitely pissed. I heard a lot of stuff during my time. I've been injured from everybody, from different people. Definitely pissed." But despite that, there was optimism. Durant would go on to say, "Every day I tell myself we're going to look back on this and smile and laugh at it and recognize that this is just an obstacle we had to climb to get to where we want to get to." For that optimism to be realized, it would have to occur under a new head coach, as the Thunder would fire Scott Brooks, a man who had coached all but 13 games for Oklahoma City since they had been in Oklahoma, and hired Billy Donovan, a 2-time college national champion at Florida. So with all that, now we arrive at the 2015-2016 season. Durant, despite being just 27, is now in his 9th NBA season. It's crazy just how young these guys come into the league these days.
Right.
Westbrook is now a 5-time All-Star and an MVP candidate in his own right. So we're talking 2 superstars drafted in back-to-back drafts who would both earn placement on the NBA 75th anniversary team.
Wow.
I don't know if that's happened. I can think of the Jazz with Stockton and Malone, but I think that may be the only time we saw 2 top 75 players go in back-to-back drafts with the same team.
I'm trying to think. I can't, off the top of my head, pinpoint that. I know Bird and McHale were relatively close, but McHale came off the bench for a while. If we're talking just like, hey, we're rebuilding from this team that Seattle had to completely move on from. We're in a new market. We got to find star power now, and they get these guys in back-to-back drafts, and they even have, before they move on from James Harden, they have James Harden for a little bit. That's that's about as potent of a rebuild as I can ever think of. No,
it's one of a kind, and there's really only one goal in the Sooner State. It's to hoist the Larry O'Brien Trophy in June. But there's a lot of obstacles to that plan. We already talked about Golden State, fresh off their first NBA championship, led by the reigning MVP, soon-to-be 2-time MVP. Elsewhere, there's San Antonio, just 2 years removed from their most recent title. Right. Kawhi Leonard in the middle of his transformation from role player to perennial MVP candidate. And of course, out east, we have LeBron James in his second year of the Cleveland homecoming. So this left OKC with just the 5th best preseason odds of winning a championship. And it's a race between all 4 Titans to the top of Mount Olympus. So now early on, Durant and Westbrook, they did flex their muscles with an opening season victory over those same San Antonio Spurs. But from there, they did have some struggles. New coach. It's only the 3rd coach in Durant's NBA career, only the 2nd coach in Westbrook's NBA career. They actually stumbled out of the gates to a 7-6 record. It's not looking good. But from there, they go into the new year 23-10. So amazing turnaround.
Wow.
But they're still quite a bit off the pace of Golden State, who's going into the new year 31-2.
31-2. Oh my gosh. See, that you just got to laugh at. That's insane.
And by the way, the Thunder would tangle with the record-setting Warriors 3 times in the regular season. and none was more dramatic than a February 27th meeting that will soon be a random game rewind here on the podcast. The Thunder welcomed in the defending world champions who were wearing those ridiculous sleeve jerseys.
Oh
Remember
man, this is the sleeve jersey era for the NBA. It was like Adidas's last ditch effort to have something fun before Nike took over. But it's from like that 2014 to 2017 period where every team had. I mean, your Jazz, they had those weird like Euro soccer looking ones that didn't even have script on the front. It was just the Jazz logo and then like the piping or whatever.
Ugly.
I could talk about this another time as well, but yeah, ridiculous is the best and probably the nicest word to say about a lot of those.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, in this game, sleeve jerseys were notwithstanding, Oklahoma City actually built a really strong first half lead with 21 points in the first half by Durant. But in the second half, Golden State did Golden State things with both the Splash Brothers, Curry and Klay Thompson, netting 19 points in the final 24 minutes to erase the Thunder lead and first in overtime period. And then Josh, just 37 seconds into overtime, a whistle blows, Durant gets his sixth foul. And despite playing overtime without their best player, it was actually a nail-biting game up until the final seconds when Steph Curry nails a 33-foot three-pointer just as time expires, sends the OKC faithful home in misery. So
This was like the all-time. No, I was gonna say this is just like if you had to sum up the Warriors season and Steph's unanimous MVP season in one game or one highlight. I mean that shot was talked about forever. I mean that was it's the two marquee teams of the West alongside San Antonio, and it ends in a way that you honestly couldn't script better than that. I mean,
oh no, just unbelievable. So I mean, despite the setback and losing to Golden State in the regular season, which just about every team did that year, the Thunder find themselves the 3 seed, behind the 67-win San Antonio Spurs and the record-breaking 73-win Golden State Warriors. I've often likened this to Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. San Antonio gets their franchise record for wins, but they don't set the record because Mark McGwire is in town. The Warriors are in town with 73 wins.
There you go.
Everyone thinks Golden State is unbeatable in these playoffs. And yet, Greg Nielsen would note for Sports Illustrated, in a hypothetical matchup between OKC and Golden State, in the end, Russ and KD will have to simultaneously deliver the best series of their lives. They'll have to outshine Curry and Klay Thompson. They'll have to hit the clutch baskets that eluded the Thunder all season. But they, Westbrook and Durant, are still the best duo in the NBA. 2 of the top 5 players in the league. They won't be an easy out for anyone. This proved to be exactly the case, as the Thunder quickly dispatched the Dallas Mavericks in the first round, sending the aging husk that used to be Dirk Nowitzki and the wandering, homeless Darren Williams home in 5 games. The second round would prove to be a much more formidable challenge as the Thunder traveled to San Antonio for a rematch of the 2013 Western Conference Finals, and they lose Game 1 to San Antonio by 32 points.
Jeez.
Everybody thinks they're done. But they block out the noise of the pundits who declared the series over, and the Thunder rebounded for an 85-84 victory in Game 2 to steal away home court advantage. They had a setback in Game 3 to once again put the future in doubt, but from then on, it was Oklahoma City masterclass. Over the next 3 games, Durant would average 33.6, while Westbrook would give 26 and 12 and 7.
Wow.
And with efforts like that, unsurprisingly, they did defeat San Antonio, sending the franchise record 67-win squad home empty-handed. And all that was left to earn an invitation to the NBA Finals was the defending champion and NBA record-setting Golden State Warriors.
Wow. And, coming off of a matchup and a series win like that, you're going to have, attention and all eyes on you, I don't think you could write a better matchup at this point in time. Where,
no doubt.
Like you said, the Thunder have had to go at it for this is year 7, 8 now of Westbrook and Durant together, and they haven't been able to break through. And it seems like, hey, if you really want to get this hoist the trophy that they've never done to this point, you're really going to have to earn it. And this matchup is extraordinarily juicy for a lot of self-evident reasons. It's got star power. You got your high-powered offenses. You got playoff-tested cores. You got huge personalities and a lot of volatility. That's all going to come to fruition in this 7-game heavyweight matchup. Curry, Westbrook, and Durant, they're the NBA's 3 most recent scoring champs at the time. They were all top 5 in MVP voting in 2016, wow. 1st, 4th, and 5th, respectively. All 3 players are top 10 in scoring, PER, win shares, plus minus, really any way you look at it. These are, top players of the league. And what was awesome about this matchup is that both the Warriors and Thunder really excelled at translating this star power into team firepower, where, every year, every team kind of has like their playoff mantra. Like Cleveland's is defend the land, Jazz, take note, whatever that is. Golden State's was always strength in numbers. And while you absolutely have your Currys, your Clays of the world, your Draymonds, you also had Andrew Bogut, Harrison Barnes, Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, Maurice Spates. This is a team that could roll you really no matter what sort of lineup was out there on the floor, where OKC brought strength and size and physicality, and Steven Adams, formerly Enes Kanter, now Enes Freedom, but Enes Kanter at the time, Serge Ibaka, just these lumbering figures, Andre Roberson at his peak, phenomenal defender. And then, of course, again, with the eccentric personalities, you got Westbrook and Green. They both excel at working the officials and the post-game podium to equal expertise. You got Curry and Durant, 2 of the prettiest shooting strokes in league history. As I mentioned, some of these other role players. But perhaps the most exhilarating aspect of this series, as Calvin kind of outlined, is that this is going to challenge each respective star core like never before. The Warriors had never faced a tougher opponent than these Thunder, and the Thunder likewise had never faced a tougher opponent than these Warriors. So stepping into game 1, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the series game by game to see what happened and why it's so important, and to really why the NBA is the way it is today. And in game 1, the defending champs come out of the gate as expected. They're loaded up. They're firing on all cylinders in their invincible home fortress of Oracle Arena, where they had not lost a single game this postseason so far. And they take this 13-point lead into halftime, where Clay has this explosive first half. He goes for 19 points at intermission. Golden State is doing Golden State things. They're shooting over 50% as a team. And the Thunder are clearly feeling it. They have 10 turnovers at halftime. 7 of those 10 come from KD and Russ. But we go into the third quarter where things drastically change in favor of the men in blue. Russ explodes for 19 third quarter points, and OKC is able to pull this game back within a couple of points before the Warriors are able to create a little bit of separation. They give the Thunder a stiff arm by bringing the lead back to 10 with a few minutes left in the third, but these Thunder are not going away, where entering the fourth, they are able to shave 10 points off of that 13-point halftime deficit. And in this tight game where the stakes are so high, some of these games often turn into rock fights. For these high-powered offenses, there were a lot of stretches where the game slowed down. The shot selection wasn't ideal. The fourth quarter, the Thunder shoot just 35% from the field, but the Warriors muster only 14 points themselves on 26% shooting. And it's a 1-point game. About a minute, not great at all. It's tight, and it's a 1-point game with a minute left. And Steven Adams, of all guys, makes 2 free throws to make this a 3-point game for the Thunder. And KD, who is in the midst of a 10 for 30 shooting night, makes the biggest bucket of the game. He makes a 17-footer, as he usually does from the mid-range, to make it a 2-possession game. Thunder get the ball back one more time after Iguodala makes a layup to cut the lead back to 3. And this is where things get kind of hairy for the Thunder for a second. As Russ is passing half court, it looks like he travels. He drags his pivot foot around midcourt in a pretty obvious violation. The Warriors bench goes crazy. The fans are screaming. Steve Kerr is, beside himself. But it's not a traveling violation because Russ did so happen to call timeout just before he very clearly dragged his foot. Steve Kerr is in disbelief, but rules are rules. Russ got the timeout off, so they retain possession. They take some free throws, and that would all but seal the game for OKC, who takes this massive Game 1 win, 108-102, where KD and Russ, they combined for 53 points, albeit on 51 shots. Steven Adams finishes with 16 and 12. And the Warriors' big three, they all score at least 23 points. Steph goes for 6 threes himself, but they all went ice cold. Steph and Klay specifically shooting just 1 for 10 in that final frame. And as I said, it culminates in this massive upset for for OKC, as they take this 1-0 series lead.
Yeah, just a shocking win at the time. Nobody expects Golden State to lose at home. And frankly, no one expects Golden State to lose going into these playoffs. Like, there's a period on that. So they find themselves down just 1-0. And now we move on to game 2. And I'm here to tell you, if you're a fan of intense, edge of your seat, back and forth NBA playoff basketball, then boy, oh boy, do I not have something for you.
This game isn't that?
This game is absolutely it's a crap show. This game started off like so many other games with Golden State. Where Klay Thompson hits a 3. The Warriors build a big lead early in the first quarter here. Now, to their credit, OKC did manage to briefly take a lead in the final 2 minutes of the first half. That lead lasted all of 11 seconds.
Oh, no.
Golden State ultimately leads by 8 at halftime, before outscoring the Thunder by an additional 19 in the second half. They lead in this one by as much as 36 at one point. All of this was accomplished despite 29 points from Durant on 18 shots. But Golden State makes 13 three-pointers. They get 50 points from their bench.
50 points from the bench. You mentioned
briefly Maurice Spates. There's a name that you probably haven't thought of in a long time. Festus Ezeli and of course Andre Iguodala all contributed to that. But yeah, 50 points off the bench, you're not going to lose a whole lot of games. And it does help that the Warriors have an advantage in all major statistical categories, including a 45-36 advantage off the glass. And this is despite the fact that no individual Warrior had more than 8 rebounds. So at this point, the script appears to be written. This is what's supposed to happen in this series. It all appeared to be in order for Golden State. Everybody thinks this series is destined to end in 5 games because Golden State's just on another level. It's the outcome everybody anticipated for the series. Seems to be well on its way. But now we head over to Oklahoma City for Game 3.
And after that drubbing of Game 2, I hate to break it to you guys, but things don't get a whole lot closer in Game 3. In fact, things get uglier, but in a way that no one really expected. This game was competitive for all of about a quarter and a half, and this is before OKC puts the pedal to the metal. This is the equivalent of you're playing video games with your friends, maybe even your little brother. He gets a couple hits on you, and you finally lean forward in your seat. You got your elbows on your knees, your eyes squint a little bit, and just like that, it's game over. And this is what happens here. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and the Thunder give the Warriors as complete a beating as they experienced during this record-setting season. And just like that in a night, suddenly a second straight title seemed to be anything but a given for Golden State. And now it looks like they are just trying to survive. In this Game 3, the Warriors at one point trailed by as many as 41 points.
Oh, wow.
Steve Kerr says, he summarizes it perfectly. He says, quote, "We got what we deserved." And this dominance from OKC was apparent first and foremost on the glass. They out-rebound Golden State by 14. That's a 52-38 margin. And they won a lot of those 50-50 hustle plays that lost them Game 2. things did get dicey for a second. We mentioned Draymond Green's all league irritants earlier, and this is where he really gets that reputation that he's going to carry on for the next several seasons, even to this day. He notably kicks Steven Adams in the groin area, and I'm sure everyone's seen this. He becomes the Thunder fans' number one target because of some pretty questionable tactics. With a little under 6 minutes left in the second quarter, Draymond kicks Adams after a foul, and this is the second time in the series that Draymond had hit Steven Adams there. He hit him with a knee back in game 2, and the crowd is chanting to kick him out. Draymond, of course, has just issued a flagrant 1. He's allowed to remain in the game. But this is when the ire for Draymond is really peaking.
Absolutely. I remember that play. I think it's so funny how Draymond tried to make it look like a basketball move.
Yeah.
But he's clearly just flailing. He's clearly going for the family jewels of New Zealand.
Right. I mean, I think it's pretty apparent as well. And, funny enough, this is going to directly impact Draymond's game. He struggles on both ends of the floor. Of course, Draymond is never your 25 point per game scorer, but he's someone who's going to fill the box score. He's going to show his impact in ways that don't show up in the box score. But in this game, he is clearly affected. He finishes with just 6 points on 1 of 9 shooting. And he was a minus 43 on the court. To be fair, in a blowout like this, Steph or Clay weren't much better, but Draymond was a team worst, minus 43. And seemingly energized after Draymond's flagrant, the Thunder outscore the Warriors 24-7 the rest of the half, with a lot of those baskets coming against Draymond. And in a play that summarizes this second quarter perfectly, where the Thunder break away, Draymond goes in for a layup. He gets it blocked by Durant, who then responds himself with a 3-pointer on the other end. This is a 5-point swing to give the Thunder a 64-47 lead. Draymond is going to foul Westbrook on a long 3-pointer with about a second left in the first half. Westbrook's going to make all 3 of those free throws, and just like that, the Thunder are up 25 points at the break. In this first half, KD goes for 23 points on 6 of 10 shooting, 10 of 10 from the free throw line. Westbrook has his usual 16, 6, and 7 at half. Both players shoot over 50% for the game. This is the first time in the entire postseason that both KD and Russ eclipse that 50% mark in the same game, which is pretty astounding.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
This onslaught's going to continue. OKC hangs a 45 burger in the third quarter, and then enters the fourth up 37, and eventually they reach that final score of 133-105 in favor of OKC. Good for a 2-1 series lead. Surely, after 2 straight blowouts, Calvin, Game 4 will be closer, right?
We'd like to hope for that, but sometimes the basketball gods have other ideas. And going into this game for, the Thunder find themselves in a position probably nobody thought they'd possibly be at this point, leading the 73-win Golden State Warriors in a playoff series, and with a chance to take a commanding lead at home. And this is a game where, from the beginning, frankly, the 18,205 fans at Chesapeake Energy Arena knew something special was happening, and I'll let you know why. There are 2 prerequisites required to beat the 15-16 Golden State Warriors. Number 1 is your best players must have their best games. And number 2, and probably perhaps more importantly, is you just have to hope and pray at least one of the Splash Brothers has an off night. And from the get-go in this one, Josh, it's clear that number 2 would be checked off.
Mm-hmm.
Steph Curry starts the night shooting just 1 of 7 from the field in the opening quarter. In fact, things looked so bad, that post-game interviews, reporters would actually ask if he was injured. He's not injured, Steve Kerr replied. He just had a lousy night. It happens, even to the best players on the planet. So Steph would finish this night shooting 6 of 20 for a lackluster 19 points. So that leaves the door wide open. But now OKC needs somebody who cannot just go through the open door, but who can break the her door down. And that somebody is named Russell Westbrook tonight. So after those opening 12 minutes, and despite Curry's off night, Golden State was actually well within striking distance, trailing by a score of just 27-30. So this is when Josh, the UCLA product, when he goes bonkers. I'm talking, has bonkers on that court, has bonkers has his fashion senses.
Oh man, that's pretty bonkers.
Absolutely. He scores 16 points in a little less than 10 minutes on the floor and finishes the first half with 21 and 9 and 5.
Wow.
The triple-double watch only intensifies in the second half, as Westbrook would indeed end the game with 36 and 11 and 11 to suddenly put OKC up 3-1 in the playoff series. Westbrook himself would say, I play every game like it's my last, regardless of who's in front of me. He went on to say, that's my job. And my job is to worry about my team. And that's all I do. I think we're in a good place. But like I said, this game is over. We've got to move to the next game. Every game is different. And how exactly did that play out in Game 5? After a couple of, frankly, uncompetitive games, would Game 5 be different?
I think Russ said it best. Every game is indeed different. And heading into this pivotal Game 5, 3-1 lead for OKC, surely the Warriors never expected to find themselves in a situation like this coming off of the season that they just had. And yet, as nearly 20,000 Warrior faithful filed into Oracle Arena on May 26th, 2016, it looked like the Warrior season was about to end unceremoniously, elimination staring them right in the eye, and it took a hell of a game to send this series back to Chesapeake Energy Arena. Despite the Warriors leading for all but 14 seconds of this Game 5, it was one in which the Thunder, thirsting for that first finals appearance since 2012 against LeBron James's Heat, they would not go away. The Warriors take an 8-point lead into halftime. Clay's going for 16 points, and you had 10 points and 8 rebounds from Aussie big man and University of Utah product Andrew Bogut. Kerr making actually a special mention to get him going in order to combat OKC's aforementioned size and strength in the front court. And then Maurice Spates also providing a nice spark off the bench, another name drop for Maurice. Trailing by 8 points at halftime, 58-50, OKC comes out of the break with a 9-2 run. Westbrook cans a three with about 6 minutes left in the third quarter to put them within 1 point. Actually, they're ahead by 1 point for their first lead of the game. But Golden State is able to take an 81-77 lead going into the fourth. And then, in typical Warrior fashion, a quick run breaks the game open a little bit more for them. They open the fourth period with an 8-0 run. Billy Donovan, OKC's coach, makes a special emphasis on OKC trying to simply get into the lane and put pressure on the basket, something that the Thunder did in this game, but weren't able to convert on those opportunities. And Calvin mentioned this, for all the speculation about the current state of Curry's beat-up body. He has that troublesome ankle. He has that sore MCL. He did it all this game. Kerr even noting that Steph looked close to 100%, and as close as he had seen him to 100% since he sustained those injuries. Steph is able to pace Golden State scoring. He finishes with 31 and 7 and 6, 20 of those 31 coming in the second half. Quite the game for him, filling out the box score. And with about half the fourth quarter left, Golden State pulls ahead by 13 points in the game, looking to put this away and simply just stay alive, live to see another day. OKC answers with an 8-0 run to make this a 5-point game in just a little over a minute. And then they suddenly went ice cold. They would only score 3 points over the following 3.5 minutes as the Warriors would hold their ground. And after a tough Game 3 and Game 4 in OKC, Draymond bounced back in the way that he knows how. Generational defense and a little bit of everything in the box score. He finishes with 11 points, 13 rebounds, 4 assists, and 4 blocks.
Great game.
Great game from Draymond. KD and Russ do combine for 71. You got 40 from KD and 31 from Russ. As Calvin mentioned earlier, when you're playing these Warriors, you hope that you either have the game of your life or that the Splash Brothers fall apart in this game, despite, again, 70 plus from the OKC star tandem. Steph went off in this game, and both players, KD and Russ, shot under 40% as the offensive problems that are going to start to plague OKC over these next couple of games are cropping up. Both players took a lot of contested shots, and a lot of these were not in the flow of the offense. And you know what? At the end of the day, the home team won the big Game 5 with their backs against the wall. It was more of a must-win for them than it was for OKC. They simply just played with more desperation, and you could even argue that winning that Game 5 would have been tougher for OKC to win than for Golden State. And this sets up this Game 6 that, in my opinion, is the highlight of the series. It's the game that a lot of people look back on as the, I guess you could say, the turning point for the series.
No, it definitely is. It's back in the Sooner State. We're back into Oklahoma for Game 6. A big chance for the Thunder to not only put away the 73-win Golden State team, but to do it in front of the home fans. That would be one heck of a special moment. So putting the fireworks and for OKC the disappointment of Game 5 behind them, I mean, the Thunder just got to be licking their chops to be back at home and to do this for the fans. But, from the beginning, it was clear that nothing was going to come easy in this game. You talk about playoff games where people are throwing up the rocks. Well, how about this? In the opening frame, Durant just struggles all over the place. He can't get rhythm anywhere. He shoots just 2 of 10 from the field. But they'll prove to be clunkers on both ends of the court, as Klay Thompson was only slightly better at 3 of 10 from the field. And get this, Steph Curry was scoreless in the first quarter. Only attempted 3 field goals, put up a big goose egg. The only relatively hot hand, and I say that relatively with a lot of emphasis, was Westbrook. He ends the first quarter with 8 points on 4 of 7 shooting. So, suddenly the tone of the game, in which these superstars are completely dim, the stars are not shining, was not, who's going to have the big game. It's who can withstand the slump the longest.
That's the best way to put it.
Okay, so by the end of the first half, the Warriors were shooting just 36% from the field. The home team wasn't much better at just 44%, but it was enough an advantage to take a 53-38 advantage going into the locker room. Now, I'm not sure what was said in the locker room by either Coach Donovan, by either Coach Donovan or Coach Kerr. But whatever was said, I think Steve Kerr's speech ended up being a little bit better. At least for one player. So the third quarter kind of moved the same. I mean, the things are beginning to stabilize. Durant goes 3 of 5. Curry goes 4 of 9. Thompson goes 2 of 6. But overall, Oklahoma City is only able to extend their lead, winning that quarter by 3 points to take an 8-point lead into the final period. And this is where things really change. This is where championship teams can really identify themselves. It's been said that a championship team is not as good as their best player. They're as good as their second best player.
Love that.
And when your second best player is Klay Thompson, things are generally going to look pretty good for you. Mr. 76 himself should have been on the All-NBA 15.
76.
But keep in mind, this was not Thompson's night. And again, started the game 3 of 10. Where the fourth quarter comes, Bugs Bunny gives him Michael's secret stuff. And Klay proceeds to make 5 of the first 6 field goals for Golden State, 5 of them being 3-pointers.
Wow.
Comes out just a man possessed, a man on a mission. We've seen him do this. We've seen him in, quarters set the all-time scoring record for a single quarter.
Yep.
He didn't do that tonight, but he might as well have for how bad shooting had been. In the fourth quarter alone, he shoots 6 of 9, including 5 of 6 from three-point land. Throws in a couple of free throws, just for good measure, and a couple of rebounds, because why the heck not? Finishes with 19 points. But he sets the tone for the entire team. Golden State altogether shoots 50% in this period, including 61% from 3. Oklahoma City, on the other hand, with the opportunity to send home the defending world champs, Durant goes 1 of 7.
Oh.
Westbrook goes 2 of 7.
Oh, jeez.
The rest of the team combined to go 2 of 6. 26% shooting, including goose egg from 3-point territory. Golden State wins the final quarter 33-18. And that is more than enough to erase the lead that Oklahoma City had just kind of milked the entire game. That's enough to give Golden State a 108-101 victory. After the game, Klay Thompson, talking about how he went nuclear in the final period. Steph told me before I went out in the fifth, "This is your time," Thompson said. "You know, put on a show out there and have fun." I took those words to heart, and I just tried to be aggressive. Well, he tried and he succeeded. The only question now was, could that kind of aggressiveness extend into Game 7, and could Golden State actually reverse a 3-1 deficit?
And after that Game 6, it's, all momentum that the Thunder had after Game 4 has completely gone the other way, especially, after Calvin outlined that gut punch of a Game 6 where it was close. And if you look at the game log, if you go back and watch the game, the Thunder had several chances to put the game away. There were several instances where they were up with more than enough to start to kind of create a sizable lead, but were never able to build on that and, stave off the onslaught that was Klay Thompson in that fourth quarter. And after those two intense games, I can tell you Game 7 did not fail to deliver in its own right. Most Game 7s are rock fights just because the pressure is so high. Teams slow the game down. Nerves are super high. They're extra physical. And this one was definitely no exception back in Oakland. Despite all this momentum supposedly being with Golden State, it was OKC, resilient as this core is, who raced out to a 13-point lead halfway through the second quarter before they settle in with a 6-point lead at halftime, 48-42. Neither team shooting over 40%, as per the norm for a lot of these Game 7s. And Russ is leading all scorers with 14 points. He's got his 8 assists. And then Klay and Steph have 13 and 12, respectively. But they both kind of had a tough time finding a rhythm as they shot a combined 9 for 22 at half, under 50%. And interestingly enough, it was Durant who is efficient but quiet, only took 5 field goal attempts in this first half. Of course, Westbrook shot more, but KD even took fewer shot attempts than Andre Roberson, Steven Adams, and Enes Kanter off the bench.
Wow.
Something that was odd. So despite the efficiency, not a lot of aggression from Durant thus far.
I have to wonder, just real quick, if
that's
the hangover from a really terrible Game 6.
I mean, to put it frank, yeah.
He did score 29 points in Game 6, but he needed 31 field goal attempts to do that, including just 1 of 8 from 3-point land. He has to be in his own head at this point, and he's, letting other players get shots until he feels comfortable.
I think that's fair. And watching it certainly feels that way. And you almost wonder, I mentioned earlier, the big issue for OKC in these final 3 games is the shot selection. It's the lack of flow in the offense. So you have to wonder if KD's maybe being a little more selective with the shots and perhaps in his own head a little bit, certainly. Another pretty big tactical decision by part of the Warriors that's paying dividends from Steve Kerr is that Iguodala is the one who is now replacing Harrison Barnes in the starting lineup. And that's something that Kerr had done last year in 2015 during crunch time. Iguodala provides, of course, not only some shooting on offense, but he provides a lot of defensive versatility and switchability, as well as frequently taking the opponent's best perimeter matchup. And, Iguodala comes in, he makes a nice bounce pass through the paint to Draymond for Golden State's first basket. Smothering defense on KD, you have to wonder if that's also keeping Durant in check. Again, the oddness with Durant's hesitation goes without even a shot until his three with under 6 minutes left in the first quarter.
Wow.
But despite this, like I said, OKC is taking the lead. They dictate the tempo. They have snappy passes. They're playing hard, aggressive. They're rebounding as per their strength. But they couldn't sustain it. It takes a quarter and a half for Klay to warm up after his 41-point explosion against OKC that sent the series back to Golden State. He misses his first 7 shots before hitting a 3 6 minutes before halftime, and it energizes the Warriors in their first Game 7. This is Golden State's first Game 7 at home in 40 years. Back-to-back threes by Klay and Iggy pull the Warriors within 3 points with under 8 minutes left in the third quarter, and they would tie it on Curry's 3, and he followed with another 3 to finally give the Warriors the lead. And this third frame is where things fall apart for the Thunder. They muster only 12 points in this frame as they saw their 6-point advantage morph into an 11-point deficit as they shot 26% in the third quarter.
Oof, that is disheartening. If you're an OKC fan, OKC player, that just takes the wind out of your sails.
It does. And, time's running out. It's things are starting to tighten up very quickly. Durant in total takes just 9 shots in the first 33 and a half minutes of this game. He's going to get a little more aggressive as the game goes on, especially in the fourth quarter where the Thunder really have no option but to really press the issue. They make one more charge in the fourth quarter. They make it a 5-point game with about 5 minutes left, and even a 4-point game with under 2 minutes left. Durant caps off a personal 7-0 OKC run, again, where he's a little more aggressive in this final frame where he takes 9 shots. He goes 4 of 9. He makes a 14-footer, but Curry follows that by making 3 free throws on the following possession, a dumb foul. And after a couple more KD misses and one more Steph 3 with 30 seconds left to make it a 10-point game, this door had been effectively slammed shut. That symbolic door that Calvin alluded to, that they needed to bowl down and rip out of its frame, it slammed on them. And what worked so well for Golden State in stifling OKC's stars was the ball simply just stopped moving for the Thunder. The players stopped moving. Golden State switched a lot on screens. They plugged the paint. They trapped Durant and Westbrook frequently. And this resulted in a series of one-on-one, or in a lot of cases, one-on-two moves that went simply nowhere for OKC. They were in position to win, but then that ball stopped moving. And what also stopped moving was OKC's ascension to the best in the West. Steph, the MVP of the league, scored 36 points, finished with 7 3-pointers. He actually had an NBA record with 32 threes in a 7-game series. Add 8 more assists on top of that. And his signature mouthpiece dangling out of his mouth, game ball cradled in his left hand, pumps his right arm as yellow confetti falls to the floor of the Oracle Arena. The final buzzer sounds, and the Warriors take this 96-88 ugly Game 7 win. Klay also adds in 21 points and 6 threes of his own. And the Warriors become just the 10th team at the time to rally from a 3-1 deficit to win the series as they return to the NBA Finals for a rematch with the Cleveland Cavaliers, who again lost the year prior. And all they could say after the game was, "Bring on LeBron James again."
And indeed, LeBron James would come out again, and indeed, we know how that one ended. That's perhaps a story for another episode. I'm kind of more concerned about what happened in the aftermath here, Josh. So Oklahoma City, they've been a perennial playoff participant. They've made 3 Western Conference Finals, 1 NBA Finals, and they have essentially nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, Golden State is all systems go. I mean, this is a team, you watch them, and they're in a close game, though it's a 5-2-point game. You go to the fridge, and suddenly Golden State's up by 15.
Yep.
That's just the way they played basketball, and they did it to everyone, not just Oklahoma City. They bullied everyone in this era by simply being the most efficient shooting team that we have ever seen. But that leaves the Thunder in quite an awkward position, because this is the last year of Durant's contract. He is 9th NBA season. Again, still young, still just 27.
That's crazy.
He came to the league so young, but at a pivotal point. Basically, 27 to 30 is a player's prime. Is he going to spend his prime in Oklahoma City, or is he going to go elsewhere? And that's when things really, really get crazy. We all know the story from here. We all know the picture in The Athletic for my next chapter. But Durant does the one thing that basically, I don't know if his reputation has ever recovered. Because he does the thing that most people consider to be the easy way out. He literally does the, if you can't beat them, join them philosophy. And he signs, again, one of the top 5 players on the planet, arguably a top 2 player on the planet, signs with the 73-win Golden State Warriors. And Josh, just tell me about the implications and the aftermath of when that decision landed.
I mean, when I think of that decision, a decision that I think, even with context, I know some people like to compare it to when LeBron went to Miami, and even that, sure, maybe set the precedent for player empowerment, for player movement, was still a drastically different situation considering context and circumstances to what you just outlined, with Kevin Durant joining this team that they were up on and then lost to, and wasn't just any team. It was a team that won 73 games and was already a champion just 2 years prior, and completely shifts the balance of power in the NBA. It directly affects the championship, specifically for the next few seasons, as KD is going to spend 3 seasons in Golden State. They'll make the finals every year, winning in 17 and 18, losing in 19, as finally injury luck goes the other way. Kevin Durant injured in 19, Klay Thompson hurt in the 19 finals. But, you wonder what happens if Durant either resigns or goes elsewhere. I think it's fair that he left OKC. This is kind of the culmination of, a few years of frustration with not only losing and not being able to break through back to the finals, but frustration with Westbrook, as we found out after everything has gone down, that there was frustration with the style of play, with personalities, with roster personnel. And it was pretty apparent that I understand that maybe he didn't see a way out in OKC, especially with this brewing contender in Golden State. And, you wonder where else he could have gone. I know he met with Boston that summer. I know he met with Washington, which is where he's from. Funny enough, the Lakers, who are kind of like in the absolute, valley of where they're at as a franchise, don't even land a meeting with KD, as this is post Kobe, pre LeBron. So the Lakers have like no clout right now, which is funny. Funny enough, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Lakers the year prior couldn't even land a second tier star in LaMarcus Aldridge, who signs with San Antonio, which is funny, but that's for another time. But you wonder what happens if he goes elsewhere. The year after, the Warriors and Cavs go against each other in the 17 finals, and the Warriors just have overwhelming star power, despite the Cavs having star power of their own. You wonder if LeBron's able to get one more ring in Cleveland in addition to the 16-1. You wonder if, hey, maybe the Warriors and Cavs simply run it back, but without Kevin Durant. I think it's fair to say that after 15 and 16, that those two teams are pretty even. The Warriors winning in 15, Cavs getting one in 16. And you wonder if Kevin Durant even goes there. Maybe let's say the Warriors beat the Cavaliers in 5 games, and Cavs don't pull off this miraculous 3-1 comeback. Does KD go elsewhere? Does he actually still just sign with the champs anyways? It's pretty crazy to think about, honestly.
It really is. There's so many what ifs. And I'll tell you this. This is my opinion, but it's a true opinion. At that time in his career, 27 years old, Kevin Durant would have made at least the conference finals with any team in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I very much believe that. He was that dominant at that time. Now, this generation grew up playing AAU. They grew up going to 3 or 4 high schools within their high school career, so-called. They grew up with the mentality that, the best players team up. That's just what they do. And that's just what he did. And Golden State, of course, the very next year, almost swept the playoffs. They went 16-1 in the playoffs, with that one loss coming in Game 3 against Cleveland, which Golden State was just sleepwalking in that game.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, what if this is a pivotal moment? The bigger what if is what if Oklahoma City actually wins that Game 7, or that Game 6, or that Game 5. If that happens, Kevin Durant renews in Oklahoma City. He puts his differences with Russell Westbrook aside, and Oklahoma City by now has 2 or 3 championship banners hanging from the rafters. I honestly believe that. Tough luck for the OKC fans, much less like the predecessor franchise, the Sonics, who were constantly in the playoffs and constantly in the hunt every year in the 90s, but could never punch through. Oklahoma City in the 20-teens, constantly in the hunt, could never punch through. And Durant sailed away into the sunset.
That's a great comparison with the two, same franchise, but completely different, not only names, but situation. The Sonics break through once in the 90s. They fall to Michael Jordan, the Bulls. And then the Thunder break through once in the 2010s. And who do they lose to? One of the other 2 greatest players of all time, LeBron James and the Heat. Funny how that works out, how history kind of echoed itself. And, a few years down the line, it was enough to knock KD out of OKC and into Golden State. And here we are, 6 years later. And I think it's 7 years later. And it's very fair to say that the ripple effects of that decision are still being felt.
Oh, absolutely. We feel the ripple effects with Westbrook claiming an MVP, averaging a triple-double, would never have happened if Durant had stayed. And we feel the ripple effects all across the league. And that's what I love about taking the NBA time machine back. Whether it's 7 years or 70 years, you can definitely see the impact echoing through as we reach the present day. And Josh, this has been a blast. Another great ride on the NBA time machine. Another great episode of Once Upon a Dribble. If you like what you've been listening to, please subscribe on whatever platform you may be listening to. And if you'd be so kind, just tell your friends about the podcast. Word of mouth helps us just as much as any algorithm. And we've got a lot of good things planned for the future, don't we?
That we do. Yeah, we open the doors for some other things we want to look at here in this episode, and there's other stuff that we have up the pipeline that we've been looking at for a while now, and hopefully looking towards the end of the year to hopefully step into some episodes where we bring on other people and interview them. Love to get some other perspectives. And
for Josh Medeiros, I am Calvin Johnson. This has been Once Upon a Dribble. Good night.